discuss you as a player coach. It's actually where I'd love to start with. And you've done it for a number of years. What are some of the key learnings you've taken out of those years and things you could pass on to other people who might looking at doing similar style coaching?
Yeah, look, it is tough, and it's something that I was very green at and raw when I first started doing it and didn't realise what's involved in it. But I think one of the major learnings that I've got now is first and foremost as a playing coach, you need to play good footy. If you're not, as a playing coach, playing good footy, it doesn't matter how the team's going, you'll get scrutinised. So that's one of the learnings I've really taken from it. It's probably as a playing coach, it's more important these days in any grade, country footy, metro footy. If you're a playing coach, you need to be playing good footy. And then you need to have really good assistant and trust off the ground. But those are two things that I think you need to get right. But some of the benefits that I really think you can get is, particularly in some of the things that I saw in my early days at Benella Footy Club, was on-field leadership and quick assistance to players who were quite raw and undeveloped at that time. I found it really brought those kids and younger players on really quickly. So there's some of the key learnings that I think I can take away from a bit of time now that I've spent probably reflecting over the playing coaching space. But first and foremost, you need to play good footy yourself, because scrutiny will come if you're not playing good footy.
Well, with the assistants, and that was actually a next point I wanted to discuss, what are some of the things you think you've done well and maybe some things you maybe haven't done as well with managing your working relationships with those assistant coaches?
Yeah, good question. I think it's vital that you have a very good working relationship with your developing coaches, as in your reserve team coaches or your development league coaches, as well as your under 18 or under 19 coaches. You need to have a really good working relationship with those guys, because evidently, as a playing coach, you spend a lot of your time preparing for the game yourself. So a really good working relationship with the club coaches, but also with your bench coaches as well. And it's a very fine line, and there's some models that I've worked with that have worked and some that haven't worked, and needed to refine over the time. But you need to have really good and close connections with your off-field staff. But most of the time, when you're playing the game and you're on the field, the off-field takes control of itself, and by that I mean they take charge. If something needs to be done immediately, the off-field staff need to take control, and it's something that I think community footy, whether it be metro or country, will only become more paramount now that you're a playing coach or your team has a playing coach. I think they'll become more prevalent within community leagues into the future.
Yeah, okay. What are some of the models that you found that didn't work? What would some of the things that you found that just weren't as effective as you sort of hoped they would be?
Just when that connection breaks down within your coaching structure, whether that be with the reserve or thirds base, or whether that be with off-field assistants, if that communication breaks down, or if your objectives aren't pushing in the same direction, that can really break you down that way.
Fantastic. Moving into some of your key principles for better and consistent footy, what are they, and how have you sort of developed those over time?
Yeah, better and consistent footy. I think it's about growing the whole person and growing the whole playing list, and they work together. You need to have depth within your playing list, so to grow each person that's around. And community footy's not like managing a list at AFL level or even VFL level. You can't pick and choose who comes. Sometimes you get what you're given, and you inherit some things if you take charge of a football club. So you need to grow each person, and to do that, they need to have trust in you, but you've also got to show great trust in them. And when you've got the balance of them having trust in you, but you've also got trust in them. That really is where they can grow and you can grow, and the relationship develops. So that's what I really think is really constant within developing them as footballers.
And with some coaches out there, is there any sort of common mistakes you see maybe other coaches do from your position out there?
Common mistakes. Common mistakes. Basically, from just reflecting over, look, with this year off, we call it at the moment, with a COVID year off we're having, I've been reflecting over my mistakes, but also some other mistakes that I've witnessed in the past, and a lot of the time I can see coaches and head coaches, no matter what league it is, take too much responsibility on their own shoulders, and that's whether that be to control everything, that they think they're the main man, that they think all the responsibilities on them, and probably earlier in my time I did that. It has its positives too, that you've got control, but the reality is you're taking too much on yourself and you're just wearing yourself down, and sometimes you're closing in your ideas away from what could be growing the development of the team and the club.
Yeah, okay. And I guess sort of moving into sort of some of the training things over a course of a pre-season, if you're taking on a new role in a new club, what are sort of some of the things you're looking to sort out and look at first off in the sort of first week of pre-season?
Yeah, you meet players. Put time into the players, and make sure that you've got connection with them first. Then you've got to make the real commitment. And when I say real commitment, you've got to make everyone feel valued. Not to say that, and this could be from a person that opens the rooms up to the person that comes down and watches training to the president. They've always got to be felt that they're valued within the place, and show a bit of love to the organisation. I feel that's key, and you've always got to have time for that for everyone really, because as the coach or as the leader of an organisation, people are going to want to speak to that person, and sometimes it can be tiring, but you've just got to make the effort, and if you're not willing to make the effort, you're in the wrong role. So making people feel valued, I think, is a major focus, and if for the first couple of weeks to the month, that's what I would do. I would try and make everyone feel as though they're warmly greeted firstly, but also feeling valued around the place.
So I really like that. And if I sort of just broke that down a little further, it's what we do here in the show. Yep. What could like a new coach do? What sort of things could you actually give them to go and do? So would that be going have a conversation with the board or the president or the footy manager, or what sort of things do you do that make them feel valued?
You need to have regular connection with your board and with your president. A very positive working relationship there is obviously a major focus, but it's probably more towards, I'm talking about your volunteers, your trainers, and these people that are really the heart and soul of your club, and they're the ones that you really need to look after and look out for and make sure they're feeling valued. Often when they're not, breeds about bad environment, because the environment breeds your culture, and if you've got a good environment at your club, and one that's thankful of those people working there, I think you started off on the right foot. So that's one thing that I would suggest a new coach makes value. Also with your playing list, and getting back to a question that you spoke about prior, is at a community club you've got a playing list, and often a coach, and a particular new coach, would spend more time with his good players or with their good players, and it's important that they're really spread evenly, and knowing your players is a major focus, because some players would need one tap on the back every 4 weeks and they'll be happy, whereas some other players might need a cuddle every second day just to keep them going. So knowing your players is also really a major focus early on in a coaching space in a different club.
And is that just a time thing, you think, just with players to sort of figuring those things out, or is there any, I guess, tricks of the trade, if you like, to sort of speed up that process?
Oh, spending time with them, yeah, is the easiest way. When I say the easiest way, it's time consuming, but it's probably the best way of finding it out, because then you find out the way for yourself about the way they operate. Observation. So if the new coach probably had the chance to view them beforehand, so if he or she was taking on a role the following season, if they were able to view their games and the way they played footy, and I'm a big believer in the way the person plays their game of footy, the way they play their style, is the way they live their life. And I reckon there's huge correlation in the way that someone plays a game to the way their morals and their consistencies are with their life in general too. So it's not always the case, but that's just my learnings along the way from that.
The interesting thing I read just yesterday, actually, I was reading Tom Bell-Chambers obviously just hung up the boots in the AFL, and he made a comment. I saw that 16 or so local clubs have already approached him about coming and having a kick next year.
Yep.
If you had a Tom Bell-Chambers type who came back to, say, local level, and let's just assume, say, he wasn't really interested in doing the hard yards of training and, maybe miss a session, late for different meetings and so forth, but yet on Saturday when you're playing, he dominates. He gets 40 tap outs and kicks 4 goals a game or 5 goals or whatever it is. How would you go about managing a player like that who's got elite skills, elite talent, but just probably not fitting in with the training and the I guess the culture of your club?
Yeah, it's a bit like how they managed Gary Blitz Senior back in the 80s. It is a tough one because, as I touched on before,
Can I just point out, I'm not saying Tom Bell-Chambers is going to be like that, but I was just making. I've sort of seen things in the past, but I just thought, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure Tom's got some huge options too, and I've just seen the social pages too, so I think he's got a bit going on in those social pages in the newspaper as well. But Tom, I'm sure he's got some great options in terms of community footy, and I think it'd be mad if there was a community footy club that didn't approach Tom at the moment.
It'd be a handy addition.
It would be a handy addition to any community club, but in terms of standards for those, everyone, and whether you be the best player or the most valuable player to your 16th picked, you got to treat them a little bit differently. It's not a one size fits all, and people that try to do that is a massive mistake. And I'm from a teaching background too, and we're currently on these remote learning situations, and each student that we've got at the moment, and this is a good example for it, each student we've got at the moment's got a different home life. They've got different amount of support, they've got different motivations, they've got different things that they have to get done. So it's very hard to really classify them all with the same code that you've got to assess them on the same line, and that's really tough. And it's similar with football and with these players that they might be going through a messy breakup, they might have just lost their job. During these periods, they might be, there might be other things in their lives. They might have a drug or alcohol addiction, and these are the things that we talk about as a community coach. You do deal with them, and I have dealt with them, and so there's lots of things going on in these people's lives. So that's a long-winded answer, but the answer is you can't treat everyone just the same. So if Tom, for namesake, if he wasn't to turn up and he was braining him on the weekend, you'd probably have to get back to the core of the issue. And if it was just because he was being lazy, you'd probably try and get him back on side. But you wouldn't put him back in the twos. You wouldn't do a Stephen Caniglio on him and put him back in the twos and not play him and then lose by a couple of goals. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, definitely. That's another interesting topic, I guess. Yeah, I'm probably in the camp of I wouldn't be dropping a captain. The reason why it hasn't happened for 20 odd years, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that in the AFL? I know we're getting off community footy here a bit, but it's just an interesting conversation.
It is an interesting and it's a topical conversation at this time. Look, I don't think his performance was warranting getting dropped, firstly. So, no, I wouldn't drop him, and let alone that he was the captain and he's just signed a long-term deal. I just think it's a huge statement in a game that they needed to win. No, I wouldn't have done it.
Moving on, with With in season and week to week games, what sort of training habits are you looking at implementing? And I guess how's your week sort of structure up within season? Are there any specific things do you stick to a routine for the week, or how's it look for you?
Yeah, look, in terms of training, it pretty much sticks to a routine that most of the games are Saturday 2 o'clock. Majority of the time, look, you get the occasional night game or early in the season, or you get the occasional Sunday game if it's a rivalry game. But most of the time, it's a Saturday 2 o'clock, and that's just the structure of our setup. So it's Tuesday and Thursday night training sessions with the post-match selection and the meal night, like most community clubs would do on the Thursday night, which is a great thing and something that people have really missed. Both footballers and netballers within the country communities clubs at the moment have really missed those Thursday night interactions. So yeah, that's how our week looks. But in terms of what else is asked of the players, obviously there's recovery sessions, but we tend to do our recovery sessions as small groups or individually, just due to time commitment and also the travel distance that some of them have to come in. One thing that we need to touch on probably with this question is most country clubs here in the northeast, and I'm sure it's the same in other country areas, have a lot of players that travel out of Melbourne. So that can put a little bit of an impact on the standard of trainings, because often when players are travelling out of Melbourne and you're travelling players that have done it forever, they're your better players too. So it can put an impact on the training standard, and it can be tough as a coach that you want to train a certain aspect that you want to get better at that week, and there's 6 of your best 12 players that are in Melbourne for the week. So it can be tough, and that's why a lot of it now, with this use of computer and ability to chat like we are now, will be. I think it'll be beneficial to community coaches into the future.
And with your training from week to week, are you planning just 1 week at a time, or are you looking further down the track in terms of what sort of drills and skills you want to work on? How's that suit for your club and with your coaching?
No, you definitely are looking into the future as a coach, and I think that, yeah, you are. Players will say they're always looking 1 week at a time, but often in country footy, you'll get a variance in the ability of the team, and that's just the way country footy always is. So whether you've got players that are carrying injuries, you'll have them mostly. You'll have different training loads. Obviously, you'll try and work your training loads as much as you can, but training loads can go out the window a little bit with community footy, just because if you're trying to have a light week and all of a sudden your best 2 midfielders turn up and they've been roof tiling all day, all of a sudden your training load doesn't really, the light session or the heavy session would be neither here nor there, because they've been roof tiling all day, and their legs are tired anyway. So training loads, the answer to your question there is you definitely look at who you're playing in the next 5 to 6 week block, yeah.
Is there any player you've sort of seen local footy, or maybe when you were down in Melbourne, that you felt really got the most out of their talent and really hit their potential? And was there any reason why you think they managed to do that when others couldn't?
The players that really got their most out of their talent, or
even like exceeded, if you like. When sometimes you see a sportsman, you think, oh, that person probably got more out than what you thought they're capable of.
Yeah, look, a player that I really admire, and I've admired for a long. I played as a bottom age under 18 with him, and he's now etched out a really, really good career at the Gold Coast and Western Bulldogs before. Jared Harbury, I was just etched out a brilliant career, and he's been a talented player along the way, and probably, when I say he's got the most out of his ability, he definitely has done that, but also his longevity is probably what continues to amaze me with Jared. Like, he's a ripping guy, and he does a lot for community too. But I would say that, yes, he's very talented, but while he's just his longevity and his ability, like, he'd be up to 250 games now, and just an amazing career for a guy guy that was playing at Marupna Footy Club for a little while there. So
Yeah, that's a good one.
he's
He'd have
one.
to be up.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's a new club and all, but he'd have to be up there with the greatest Gold Coast players ever, really.
yeah. He'd
Wouldn't
have
he?
to look in terms of when I say he's edged out. He was unbelievably talented as a junior, but just the ability to craft out a really lengthy career, I think, is above and beyond. Yeah.
Yeah. Even another one just coming to mind. I'll just add in interest in your comments. Cade Simpson is
Mm.
another one, and I was watching a bit of 360 last night, and they're talking a bit about the different body type. Like his body type's so different to many footballers you're seeing today.
Yeah.
But geez, what a career he's put together.
Yeah, well, even his last 2 weeks, he's been as fresh and looked as good as anyone. It was a bit of a surprise that he's actually pulled the pin. He must be a little bit mentally worn out because, or the club's pulled the rug out from underneath him because he still looked very good in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, he's had a great career.
Mm.
With some of the drills, what are a couple of your favourite drills you like to run?
Yeah, look, as much kicking and catching is, and that's a phrase that I'll say a lot. Like, it can't be done enough. Like the ability to keep the ball off the opposition. So any drill, small-sided game revolved around keeping the ball off the opposition, whether it be a handball game, small-sided, or a small-sided kicking game, or working the ball through the defence. It needs to be taught. Kicking, marking, keeping the ball off the opposition is a huge focus of mine when I'm coaching.
If you had, do you have any books or documentaries you reckon people should get a hold of and have a look at?
Yeah. Look, I love watching a sporting documentary. Obviously, there's been some rippers just recently. It's probably not a coaching one, but thoroughly enjoyed The Last Dance. It was possibly my favourite documentary ever. It was just every part of it was just unbelievable, and the best part about it was it actually happened. So I wish, and that was my childhood too, watching that live and just watching it back was just amazing. But that gets off the coaching side of. I've got a book that I've just recently read, and it's a little bit older now. It's James Kerr writes it, Legacy, who it's about the All Blacks rugby team, and it's a great read. 13 rules in leadership, and it just goes through about why, and how they became so successful. But it's all very simple. What they do, it seems very simple when you read it back, but just the consistency of what they do and how everyone was on board with it just made them great. And an avid basketball fan, so anything that Phil Jackson's written, one of my favourites is probably the 11 Rings book that he wrote was really good. So there's a couple of things there.
Yeah, perfect. If you could put a banner up on every coach's bedroom door that they saw day in, day out, what would it say?
What would it say? A coach? Yeah, I think getting back to an earlier point for a coach, I've got one for a player, but for a coach, you got to treat everyone differently, and that's and they've got to show them care and compassion, and I'm a massive Collingwood fan, but I think Nathan Buckley's brilliant, and the reason I do that is because he's changed his game and his coaching ability in the space of 3 years, because basically he's about to fall off the cliff as a coach, and he did that through care and compassion for his players, and he talks about it showing empathy, and that's one thing he does. So treat everyone differently, show care and compassion and empathy would be something for a coach. But as a player, just about that consistency, I just think the simple as I got better today approach every day. If they just can get better every day, whether they're pushing to get their first game in senior footy playing for Benella Footy Club, or whether they want to crack in at the draft in 2021, if that was what their goals were and they got better every day, I'm pretty sure they'd be happy by the end of their football career and happy with the way they live their life.
Perfect. Is there Do you have any mentors that you reach out to, or I guess look up to? You obviously mentioned Buckley is one that you sort of, I guess, admire from afar. But is there anyone else you keep close to you? And do you have any advice to other coaches about mentors?
Yeah, look, I think one thing is particularly, and there was a young coach that came into our league, when I say our league, the Ovens and Murray, at the start of 2019, and he struck me as a guy that is going to be a good coach. And what he did really quickly was he sought me out and sought out other guys and started speaking to other coaches. So I speak to many community coaches, and I think that's essential for a community coach to do so, whether they be rival coaches within your league or whether they be different coaches in a different league. I still think, even though you're competing against them, you need to be able to reach out and care for and grab ideas off them and learn from them. And because if you don't, it can be a pretty lonely space. So while I don't have a mentor, and I think it's an ever-evolving thing that you do try and grab things off everyone, it's very important to stay connected with those people around you and offer support when other people ask too. So you don't keep your cards too close to your chest in what you want to do. Yeah.
Fantastic.